You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I'm your host, Cathy Biase, and I'm an holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. In today's episode, we are exploring a powerful yet often overlooked connection, the relationship between your gut, hormones, and weight loss. Have you ever wondered why some diets work for a while but then seem to stop, or why stress, sleep, and digestion can make or break your weight loss journey? The truth is, your gut health and your hormones play a massive role in regulating your metabolism, which in turn impacts the success or failure of attaining your weight loss goals. Joining us today is Louise Digby, and together we discuss how our weight is influenced by key hormones like insulin, cortisol, and leptin, and what you can do to optimize your gut for lasting weight loss. Louise Digby is a registered nutritional therapist, women's weight loss expert, and founder of the Nourish Method to lasting fat loss. Her clients come to her after struggling to lose weight in their 40s and 50s, despite eating well and working hard to burn the fat. Louise transforms her clients' health and well-being by identifying and addressing each individual's unique needs and imbalances so that they can lose weight, optimize their health, and rediscover their sparkle without restrictive dieting or the need for superhuman willpower. Some of the key highlights of this episode include how our hormones, our gut health, and weight loss are interconnected. Why do some people struggle with weight loss despite eating healthy and exercising? And how does the liver function fit into the weight loss conversation? Please stay tuned. We will be back in just a few minutes to speak with Louise Digby.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. Please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, X, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on those locations. Louise, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Interested to know why you got into this space of weight loss with women above the age of 40, how you sort of arrived on this specialty, because I don't think you're there yet, are you?
No, I'm not.
So how did you come to be a specialist in this area?
So when I first started practicing nutrition, I was working with everyone and anyone in terms of whatever goals or health problems they had. And what I noticed was that pretty much everyone that came to me, whether it was for IBS or depression or eczema or anything, they all also wanted to lose weight. So I became quite experienced in the weight loss side of things. And then what I noticed was that it was the women who were in this mid-stage of life, perimenopause, menopausal, who were really the most disciplined and really trying the hardest, but getting the worst results, particularly when it came to their weight. And I also noticed that, you know, my other clients, they were the ones who were getting really great results with their weight. And those were the people that were more focused on their health as opposed to fixating on calorie control and, what the scales were saying and all that sort of thing. So all of that really led me down this path to try and understand that better and help women who are struggling with this issue to get better results in a way that is sustainable, but also helps them to feel their very best. Because, what we've been taught about how to manage our weight is often not particularly healthy. It's not healthy physically, but it's also mentally quite damaging as well. So yeah, that was really my mission to really unpick all of that and find a much better way of doing things.
Well, you're headed down this path that is being elucidated by a few women in the integrative health space. The research behind women and women's health hasn't been focused on women in the past. And we are seeing a real push for research in many areas of health to support women. We are different than men. And it seems a little bit more complicated, our histories of health than men's health. And so the calories in, calories out model isn't complete enough. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I definitely say it's a fair assessment.
So when we talk about women, we talk about women's health in general and then the weight loss journey. What are the connections? Because this is where we kind of do go down our own path between women's cycles, hormones, our gut health, and how we can manage weight or the connection between weight loss and those other pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, they're intricately linked. And, those are the things that really control whether our body is in a fat burning mode or a fat storage mode. We can be in a calorie deficit, but if our hormones are imbalanced, then that can really put us into fat storage mode and block us from being able to burn fat efficiently or even at all. And, there's lots of different factors involved, and hormones are, again, just one piece of the puzzle, and there's lots of different hormones involved. We've got the sex hormones, which of course change as you go through this midlife stage, and that is a big contributor to why weight can become more stubborn. But also there's a knock-on effect with this transition that women go through, which makes them more susceptible to stress or less resilient to the impact of stress and how it impacts your sex hormones and your thyroid and the sleep quality and all sorts of things. We also become more prone to insulin resistance and gut issues and inflammation. Again, all of these things have their own direct and indirect ways of impacting how we are burning our calories. So that it's this transition phase that can be a trigger for a lot of these things. But that's not to say that there's nothing that you can do about it. All of these things can be addressed. But the problem is that the way that we've been taught to manage our weight, burn more calories, do lots of cardio, eat less, all of that can actually make many of these imbalances worse. And so it can feel like the harder you're trying, the poorer the results you're getting and the worse you feel.
Which leads to stress on the body, whether it's a mental stress or a physical stress. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So then what are the steps that we take? If you were to hierarchy a weight loss plan for somebody, would you say in general, I know we're all different, then we come to you with different stories and different health journeys, but is there one piece of the puzzle that you would go to mostly to start the weight loss process? Would you go to hormones? Would you go to gut? Would you go to stress? Where is the starting point for women who are struggling to lose weight?
Yeah, the priority is definitely different for each individual, but I think a really good starting point for anyone is focusing on blood sugar balance, because if your blood sugars are imbalanced, where they are fluctuating from going really quite high to crashing down low and then up again all over the course of the day, that has a knock-on effect on lots of things. It can disrupt all of your hormones. It can drive up your insulin levels chronically, which makes it virtually impossible to burn fat. And that drives up inflammation. And, it also makes you hungrier and grumpy, and it impacts your willpower. So it just makes it harder to be more disciplined, as well as disrupting all of these other pieces of the puzzle that are critical for supporting your fat loss. So blood sugars is a really good place to start. And part of the reason why it is such a good place to start is because it's quite simple, and it's something that can change quite quickly. Particularly if you're not full-blown diabetic, there's lots that you can do, whether you're diabetic or not, but there's lots of changes that you can see quite quickly.
Is that a diet piece alone?
There's lots of things that can impact your blood sugars. So diet is a big part of it, but stress will impact your blood sugars too. Your sleep, the exercise you're doing, and environmental toxins can even have an impact, things like caffeine. So diet is the best thing to start off with, and that can be as simple as making sure that you're getting a good amount of protein in each of your meals, especially breakfast. Because if we start off with a really protein-rich breakfast, it really sets us up for more balanced blood sugars over the course of the day, and less hunger, fewer cravings, more energy, and therefore kind of just better control over our food choices as well.
Protein is satiating, and I think for some people that is a bit of a surprise. We've been guided down the road to, lots of fiber is very satiating, and fill your diet with fat if you want to be satiated. And that's why we've, that love-hate relationship with fat in the diet is there. But the fact that protein not only gives you energy and is satiating, maybe a new piece of information for some people. Does that surprise a lot of women when you tell them that?
I feel like over the past couple of years, things have changed a lot, and protein has become a real kind of trendy thing and a real buzzword. So lots of people have heard about it, but maybe don't necessarily understand why it is so important. And I've obviously just explained how it impacts blood sugars and energy, but it also goes much further than that as well. We of course need protein to help us build our muscle, and we can get into this as well in detail, but your muscle is so important as we age. It's metabolically active. It's the tissue in our body that burns the most calories. The more we have, the easier it's going to be to manage our weight, but also there's strong links between kind of better muscle mass or higher muscle mass and longevity and just better quality of life overall, lower risk of falls and fractures. So it really is important the protein is really important for the muscle maintenance, because if we don't take steps to try and maintain our muscle, we do lose it more so after the age of 35, 40. So that's a really key piece too.
I've found in working with people and in my own life, when you change a workout routine or you begin exercising, if you don't keep up with the amount of protein that you need, that can be a stressor on the body as well. I think the first place, from what I see for women who want to lose weight, is they get on the exercise routine, which is awesome. But I think that what needs to be explained, as well as, the amount of exercising and the strength training. We hear this all over, right, Louise? You start strength training, lift heavier weights. But if that connection between the protein and the increased exercise is not explained and it is not met, that can lead to other health issues that I have seen. Have you seen the same thing in your practice?
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, I think the natural instinct and what we've been taught to do is up the exercise, restrict the food. And
exactly.
that is really problematic. We're doing more exercise. We've got to be fueling that exercise, because the way that we get fitter and the way that we get stronger is by providing our body with the fuel it needs to repair muscle. Because exercise, particularly strength training, it damages your muscle, which is a really good thing, because that's how it gets stronger, by repairing that damage. But if that doesn't happen, if the fuel isn't there, and we can actually end up reducing our muscle mass and burning that muscle for energy if we aren't fueling our bodies properly. So it is really critical. And, people can become very injury prone as well if they're not fueling their workouts properly. And, I think a lot of people that I've worked with in the past, when they've kind of tried to do it on their own, often they felt like strength training wasn't right for them, or maybe just exercise generally wasn't right for them, because they just kept getting injured or pulling muscles. And, it was the nutrition piece that was missing. And we talk about deficiencies in nutrition a lot, and we often think about vitamins and minerals, but people forget that protein deficiency is very possible and very common, and has really big implications.
It really does. And I think that needs to be elucidated more. Because, as I said, the first step for a lot of women who want to lose weight is the calorie deficit, and then jumping on a treadmill or running and trying to do the strength training. Now, when you're working with women in this age group, there are a lot of mental pieces going on at this age as well. You're going into, you're in perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, a lot of things going on within the mental aspect of women's health. Now, do you find that you need to temper where some of your clients want to be or want to go? And what I kind of mean by this is that we want to develop muscle. We want to protect our bodies in that way for all the reasons that you have said. But do we need to be cut and lifting heavy weights? How do you approach that piece of it?
I always approach on an individual basis, and what makes sense for that person, and what's going to be achievable for them. It's not always about doing the most perfect solution. It's usually about finding the happy middle ground that's going to nudge them towards where they want to be, in a way where it isn't too disruptive to their normal everyday life. And that means that they're going to be able to sustain it as well. So for some women, that means lifting heavy and getting in the gym. And for others, it might mean doing Pilates or yoga, or, doing body weight exercises at home. It doesn't have to be, this big thing where you go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. It can be done in smaller chunks at home without equipment. That's certainly been the experience that I've had with my clients anyway.
When it comes to all of this, we've talked about the hormones. I guess we'll just end off this half of the show. I'll ask you this question. We kind of gone on this exercise piece that I didn't see us getting on. How does exercise influence hormones? Is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, definitely. It influences your hormones significantly. Partly, going back to building muscle, when we have more muscle, it makes us more sensitive to insulin, which basically means that we get better at managing our blood sugars and our insulin levels. So, insulin resistance is a really chronic problem, and, often goes under the radar for a lot of women who are struggling with their weight. It doesn't always come up on your standard doctor's tests. But, whether that's an issue or not, building muscle really helps to manage your insulin levels better. So, doing more strength training can have an impact on those blood sugar hormones. But then also, exercise can have an impact on your stress hormone, particularly cortisol. And, cortisol is, it's a huge topic. We could talk about, this in alone. But cortisol is something that, we need it. It's a normal thing to have in the body and for your body to produce. But when it's chronically elevated, it can cause a lot of disruption to your sex hormones and your thyroid. It can cause a lot of inflammation, disruption to sleep and hunger hormones and insulin resistance and all these things that really block weight loss. And when it comes to exercise, when we go too hard, we go too intense, or we do prolonged cardio, that can really drive up our cortisol levels. And, it can be difficult for our bodies to bring those levels back down again after exercise, particularly if you're someone who is already quite stressed or already, very busy all the time and, kind of never really getting a lot of downtime or me time. So we do need to be cautious around how much cardio and how intense we're going if we're someone who, has the potential to have raised cortisol levels already, particularly if you are in this mid stage of life. And then on the flip side of that, things like yoga and lower intensity exercises like walking and swimming, they can be really great at helping to lower your cortisol levels. So very often the conversation I'm having with my clients is, do we need to be reducing the intensity of your exercise to a degree? Maybe not every time, but maybe a few times in the week, to help to lower your cortisol and prevent those cortisol spikes.
Have you worked with clients who have been very surprised at the fact that the going easier has helped them more towards their weight loss goals?
Yeah, it's really interesting because they're so often very resistant to it. Of course, doing cardio and those more intense workouts, they have their benefits too, of course. That can be for mental health and stress relief in terms of feeling like you're shaking off the stresses of the day. But sometimes we don't realize that whilst it can feel good in the moment, it doesn't always set our bodies up for hitting our goals. But yeah, it often comes hard to those people who do like that type of exercise. But it's, usually something that once they do scale it back a little bit, in hindsight, they can see the impact it was having. And they do see much better results when it comes to not just their weight loss, but lots of things, like their stress resilience and their sleep quality.
Just briefly before we go to, maybe you can summarize this for me. Women's estrogen levels, focus on estrogen for a quick sec here. It changes dramatically. It drops dramatically. Once we start hitting 40, the estrogen fluctuates and then drops dramatically. What is the connection between estrogen levels and the health of muscle, the health of connective tissue? And is this an area that we should be mindful of when we're gauging the intensity of things like weight training?
Yeah, so as your estrogen levels decline, that does tend to correlate with the muscle decline as well, unless we are taking steps to preserve our muscle. So yes, we definitely want to, as we get into our 40s, which is when, we really start seeing that decline happen more rapidly, we really want to be making sure that we are taking steps to preserve it with strength training. But equally making sure that we are giving our bodies plenty of time to recover. Recovery is so often ignored, but it is a critical piece when it comes to building strength, building, muscle, protecting our joints. We have to be able to recover from our workouts properly. And that's, links into sleep as well, making sure that we are not only having rest days, but that we're getting good quality sleep. And if you're not getting good quality sleep, then you may need to be leaving it a little bit longer between workouts to allow your body to get that recovery in, because otherwise we can be causing more harm than good.
That's very good advice. Okay, everyone, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada. A Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Cathy Biase.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. Our guest today is Louise Digby. Louise, we talk about stress, exercise. There's a metabolic piece that goes into the cortisol levels, hormones. I mean, it's just, we could talk forever and ever on it. An area that's not given a lot of focus. We talk a lot about hormones in the gut, and, we may get into the gut a little bit later. But what impact, and this comes from an article I read recently, actually, but what impact does the liver have? How is the liver impacted with hormonal change, with, say, a gut imbalance, and with excessive stress, whether it be due to an overload of exercise, lack of nutrition? How do we need to focus some attention on the liver, and how does that equate with weight loss?
Yeah, the liver is greatly overlooked. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there around liver health from, the detoxes advertised. And I also see a lot of information around how you don't need to do a detox, you don't need to help your liver detox. But the truth is kind of somewhere in the middle. Yes, we don't need to be going to the extreme and doing detoxes, but often our liver does need a bit of a helping hand, because, our livers have to detox a lot of things. We are exposed to many different chemicals like pesticides and pollution and fragrances and parabens from skincare, chemicals from cleaning products, and loads of different things. All things that, whether we breathe it in or whether we ingest it or it comes into contact with our skin, your liver has to get rid of it, because these things, if they're not food, then they're damaging for us. We have to get rid of it. So your liver can have quite a high burden. It can be working quite hard. And when your liver is working very hard, that can have a knock-on effect on your hormones, because your liver also has to detox your hormones and any toxins that might be produced internally, from waste products, from metabolic processes. So your liver's got a lot to deal with. And when we have this very high burden of toxins from the environment as well, sometimes our hormones don't get detoxed very efficiently, and they can be recirculated around our body even after they've been used and they need to be gotten rid of. So that can cause disruption to hormones. Sometimes that can cause estrogen dominance, where we have too much estrogen in relation to progesterone, and that is quite common during the early stages of perimenopause anyway. So that can make some of the symptoms that come with it a little bit more apparent. So supporting our livers can help to manage those types of symptoms better, but it can also have an impact on our weight management, partly because of how hormones are linked in with weight management. But also because one of our body's defense mechanisms against toxins is actually locking toxins away in our fat. The fat tissue is relatively inert. It's not very active, so it's quite a safe place to lock away anything that could be damaging. So if we have a very high toxic load, then our bodies can basically block fat burning and even upregulate fat storage to try and move those toxins out of circulation, out of harm's way. So what that means is supporting the liver is really key when it comes to supporting our hormones through this transitional phase, as well as supporting consistent fat loss. Because as we start losing weight and we start releasing fat stores, that means that we also start releasing toxins that have been stored away. That can suddenly increase our toxic load, and the body can shut down fat burning to protect itself. So, sometimes when we hit a plateau, it can be your body kind of defending itself against toxins, if that makes sense.
It does makes a lot of sense, actually. Are there signs that our liver is stressed, that we can look at any cues health-wise that our liver is stressed?
Yeah, it's often if you're very prone to headaches or migraines, obviously there can be lots of reasons why we get headaches and migraines, but one contributor can be sluggish liver pathways. So headaches and migraines can be a sign. Being very sensitive to chemicals, particularly like chemical smells. So if you smell a perfume or cleaning products or anything that's a bit synthetic and strong, that gives you a bit of a headache or makes you feel a bit nauseous, that can be a sign that your liver is struggling to detox as well. Sometimes, puffiness, particularly around the face, that can be a sign as well.
And then how would you suggest, I know you want to be working face to face when you offer up these suggestions, but just some high level or low level, I guess it would be, suggestions to help support our liver.
I think one of the best things that you can do is slowly start to try and reduce your exposure to some of these toxins where possible. We're never going to be able to completely block all of these toxins from our lives, but there's simple things that we can do to start reducing exposure. And things like switching from plastic water bottles and food storage containers to glass or metal. That's one kind of group that is dealt with getting rid of those plastics, which, we so easily absorb. If budget is an issue and you can't afford to replace all your food containers, then at least not heating food up in plastic or putting hot food into plastic can help as well. So that's a really simple switch that you can make. Getting some house plants can help as well. They can help to purify the air, particularly if you live in a city or on a main road. You can be exposed to a higher level of pollution. So house plants or air purifiers can do a really nice job of reducing your exposure to pollution. And then in terms of like skincare products and cleaning products, as you use them up and they run out, start to look for more natural alternatives, which, might be things that are labeled up as organic or natural. I'm finding over here that more and more brands are putting on their products paraben-free, phthalate-free, and that sort of thing. So it's getting a little bit easier to find cleaner products.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And I guess we really can't do a complete circle on introduction to weight loss without talking about the gut. And the gut is inextricably connected to the liver, to the hormones, as you touched on earlier. But let's look at the liver and the gut connection. And how are they interrelated?
So they're very closely linked. When we detox things, we move them into our digestive tract to be eliminated via the biliary tree, via the bile. So they're kind of directly linked in that way. But also with our gut bacteria, if it's imbalanced and we have a higher level of non-beneficial bacteria, that can be a source of toxin production, which then get absorbed into circulation and your liver has to detox and get rid of. So supporting your gut health and supporting the balance of bacteria in your gut can have a knock-on effect on your liver and just make your liver's life a little bit easier. And also it will working on your gut health will help you absorb your nutrients better. And, your liver is very, very hungry for nutrients. It requires a lot of nutrients to do its job properly. So the better we absorb our nutrients, the more equipped our liver is going to be to handle the toxins and hormones that it needs to eliminate.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the liver is it produces the products that are going to go down through the gut to be eliminated. And I'm sure the gut has something to say about that, either on the positive or the negative. Getting back to your recirculation of estrogen, that can be a gut health issue as well. Now, you are the founder of the Nourishing Method, and I'd like to take some time to talk about that and what that is and how it works with your clients.
Yeah, so the Nourish Method is a program where we work with women very closely to help them identify what is blocking them from getting to their goals, whether that's a weight loss goal or whether it's more of a health goal. Often women join the program focused on their weight and usually leave much more focused on their health, and they go through a bit of a mindset transformation as part of it. But we run tests to identify, what their key imbalances might be, what's going on with their gut, their hormones, inflammation, toxic load, and all these things that we've spoken about today. And then put together an action plan to, work on it step by step, address these issues through food, through lifestyle, environmental factors, habits, mindset, and supplementation in the short term to support addressing imbalances. So we really tackle it from all angles. And yeah, it's all about getting to the root of the issues, whether that's a physiological imbalance or whether it's a mindset issue or both, so that we can really help you to feel your best and live your best life, and do that in a way where you're never going to have to diet again, and you'll be able to keep reaping the benefits long term.
Is this a group program or very individualized, or is it a 6-week program that people can download?
It's a combination. So it's a 6-month program, and we do a combination of one-to-one work, but we also have kind of group features as well, like a forum where you can ask questions anytime, and also drop-in sessions on Zoom where anyone can just jump on and have a chat with us when they need to, or they can watch back the recording of the session if they can't make it there live.
Is the goal a specific number in weight loss, or is the goal that you set out for people more of a health orientated plan?
It's much more health orientated. For some women, they do have a weight loss goal in mind, but what they learn over the course of the program is that weight is really not important at all, particularly when you start trying to preserve your muscle mass and building that up. You might not even lose weight, but you might lose a lot of fat and gain some muscle. So we much prefer to focus on how you're feeling, how you're sleeping, your energy levels, your hormonal symptoms, how your gut's feeling, and how your clothes are fitting as well.
Would you say that it is important, so even in the 30s, to set ourselves up for this period of time in women's lives where there's such a big transition with our bodies? Do you think, the younger you are, the better to get involved in a program like yours, or would you say yours is more specifically geared to 40 and up?
I definitely think the sooner you take action, the better. I'm in my mid-30s and I am already thinking about these things. When women have troubles in this menopause transition, this isn't something that's happened overnight. There are many women that go through menopause and don't get many symptoms at all and don't gain weight. And the difference between someone who does and someone who doesn't is often the decade or more beforehand, and the imbalances that are pre-existing. It's often the change in hormones that's the trigger for all these things, but they're not the real issue. So yeah, the earlier you can start, the better. Everything that we've talked about today is applicable to anyone of any age. It's just more important during this phase of life. My program is heavily focused on perimenopause and menopausal age, but we often work with women who are younger who want to, take steps earlier to prevent problems or address problems sooner.
What type of testing do you do for your program?
We do a combination of tests. So we do an organic acids test, which is essentially looking at the waste products from metabolic processes in the body. And that helps us to get a really good understanding of gut health, bacteria balance and absorption, and inflammatory markers, nutrient levels, and also your need for nutrients. It helps us to look at the mitochondria, which is where the fat burning happens and energy production happens. So we can see if there's any kind of blockages in that process and various other things in that kind of area. And then we also do a detailed thyroid test, as well as some related markers, because for so many women, they've often had their thyroid tested and been told that it's completely normal. But actually, when you do a more advanced test, very often it's not normal, or at least it's not optimal. And that has a big impact on fat burning and overall well-being as well.
How do you support the thyroid at the age of 50 or 60?
A lot of what we've been talking about today all applies. It kind of depends on what the problem is with the thyroid. Issues can be caused by deficiencies in things like iodine or selenium or even B vitamins. Or it can be an autoimmune issue where your immune system is kind of attacking your own thyroid tissue. And if that's the case, then we need to take an approach that's quite heavily focused on gut health and inflammation, maybe liver support, maybe stress management, as well as looking at what other imbalances there are in the body, because all of these systems are interconnected. So it's never the case that we're just looking at one area in isolation.
So true. And where can people find out more? But now, do you do Zoom? Are you seeing people all over the world, or are you localized?
Yeah, we see people predominantly in the UK and the US. We work over Zoom, and we can arrange tests for people in both the UK and the US. And you can find out more about what I do by visiting louisedigbynutrition.com.
Wonderful. Louise, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. A really insightful show and relevant to so many women out there. But I wish you all the success with your program, and thanks for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Everybody, we'll talk to you next week on The Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase, here on Radio Maria Canada.